With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
Hey there, I'm Carrie Van Winkle, founder of Pappy & Company, where we celebrate family heritage and Southern craftsmanship. Check out our curated collection of artisanal goods that embody the spirit of Kentucky. From our signature barrel-aged pepper sauce aged in Pappy Van Winkle bourbon barrels to our luxurious leather goods inspired by generations of tradition, each item reflects our commitment to quality and legacy. Our line of gourmet food items are thoughtfully selected to bring the taste of the South to your table. Indulge in what I can say is the best bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup on the planet. A perfect blend of buttery rich flavors that elevate any dish or cocktail. We're big fans of the Bourbon Life Podcast, and we're honored to share the legacy of our great-grandfather Pappy Van Winkle with all of you. So visit pappyco.com for 15% off your purchase with code BourbonLife15.
Limestone Farms bourbons are like a secret portal to a world of rich flavors where high proof meets smooth satisfaction. Every barrel is meticulously crafted and blended with a specific message in mind. Experience clean delineated flavor profiles that will have you engaged from the first sip to the final drop, making your palate beg for just one more taste. Limestone Farms, bringing heritage home.
We're all familiar with finishing bourbon in wine barrels, but finishing in a rosé cask, now we're venturing into uncharted territory. For Penelope Bourbon, that uncharted territory lies in the southern Rhone region of France. Their rosé cask finish marries Penelope's straight bourbon whiskey with French Grenache rosé wine cask. The result is a unique aromatic blend of strawberry, floral, and herbal flavors. Take a sip of this one-of-a-kind bourbon at penelopebourbon.com.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how are you doing out there in what we call the green room?
I'm good out here, Mark. And yourself, Mission Control, everything looking good in there?
Living the Bourbon Life, Matt. Living the dream, man. Having a great time.
Absolutely.
Well, this is a show I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I'm really excited that we finally managed to get this set up. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I don't want to waste a lot of time, talking about Tour de France stuff, Matt, which we usually go down the rabbit hole just a minute or two. We're going to start a separate podcast called Bourbon and Bicycling maybe at some point and just pursue that. But we'll forego that for right now. But we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support. We appreciate the support of all of our sponsors. We could not bring this show to you guys and such interesting guests as we have this week without all their support. So with that said, Matt, why don't you tell everybody who we have with us this week?
Absolutely. Joining us from the future, it is Saturday night here in Kentucky, Sunday morning in New Zealand, is the founder and president of McTavish Spirits, Graham McTavish. Graham, welcome on to the Bourbon Life Podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Yeah. From the future.
Great. Well, we're from the future. This is great. Mm-hmm. We appreciate that. Now we're really happy to have you, Graham. Like I said, this is a show I've been wanting to do for a while. So really excited to finally get you on here with us and have a conversation, talk about your brand, talk about the expressions that you guys have. And the way we usually run this, Graham, is we just kind of jump right in initially. We'll talk about what we got poured up. So what we've got this first round, this is the McTavish Spirits. This is your rye whiskey.
Yes.
This is the Keeper. It's kind of a curious name, the Keeper. Can you tell everybody? Some people will know what that is, but can you share what that is?
Yeah. I mean, coming up with names for whiskey, by the way, is not easy. It's, you look at them all on the shelf and you think, oh yeah, it's called the so-and-so, the so-and-so. But people have sat around just trying their best to think of a good one. And the Keeper It sort of follows the pattern of the bourbon, which is named the Warchief. And the Warchief is really named after my character in a show called Outlander, in which my character was the Warchief of Clan Mackenzie, hence why we called it the Warchief. The Keeper really is connected to the Hobbit trilogy, which I did here in New Zealand. For 2.5 years, we filmed that. And my character, Dwalin, the dwarf, he had axes. And when I was in preparation for doing the movie, we were doing costumes and props and makeup and all the rest of it. And I had my axes, and I did what was called a show and tell, which is you show the director and the producers what you look like, and they make notes and they make comments and then they make adjustments. And while I was there, I said, I think he would name his axes. Those kind of warrior types, they have names for their swords and their axes. And I'd always remembered the author, Emily Bronte, who, if your listeners aren't aware, was an incredible 19th century author. She only wrote one book, Wuthering Heights. But she was an extraordinary character, about 5 foot tall, tiny woman. She had these 2 huge dogs, and the dogs' names were Grasper and Keeper. Which in itself, I mean, you imagine, like walking the dog in the park and you say, Grasper, Keeper. God. They were big dogs, but she had utter control over them. And Grasper and Keeper. And I'd always remembered these names. So I said, I think I would call my axes Grasper and Keeper. The next day they had those names engraved on the axes in dwarvish runes, which that was the kind of production it was. It was very detail oriented, and hence why I called the rye the Keeper. And it's just got apart from its connection with my own life and work career, I just think it's got a great bite to it. I like words that have bite, and Keeper is a good bitey word. You sort of hold on to it in your mind. So that's the story of the Keeper.
That's a great story. We appreciate you sharing that with us. Matt, what do you pick up on in terms of the nose on this? And we got 2 expressions we're drinking tonight, so we're going to kind of split it up. We're going to talk about the nose in this round on this rye. So Matt, what do you get on the nose on this one?
The nose is really fresh. You get a lot of like cool, fresh mint herbal notes right up front. Nice kind of like a caramely taffy note as well to it. But as it's opening up in the glass, I'm picking up a lot of fruit. It's getting like kind of peachy, like a lot of orchard fruit, like really bright, sweet fruits come through on the nose. Really delightful. Just a like very lovely nose.
Yeah, Matt, I like the fact you said orchard fruit. I mean, it is bright. And the thing about this, let's see, this is a 95.5 rye. It is a Kentucky straight rye. So it was distilled here. And I love the fact, and Graham, we'll talk about this here in probably round 2, in terms of transparency and things on your label. Because on the bottom, on the back, it says distilled at Green River Distilling. So you guys are very transparent about where things come from.
Sure.
Because I noticed that on the bourbon as well. But Green River is here in Kentucky, out in Western Kentucky. Jacob Call was the master distiller out there. Great guy. We've had him on the show a couple of times. Love his work. I don't know if he was there when this was distilled, because this says it's aged a minimum of 2 years. So that can be 2 or 3 or even older.
Sure.
But, I think sometimes when you see a whiskey that says 2 years old, you think, oh, that's really young. I think the thing that surprises me about this, Graham, is that the youthfulness doesn't come across. I don't pick out a lot of the grain notes that I think sometimes you get on a younger whiskey.
Yeah.
This has a very nice balance to it. Like Matt said, there's a brightness to it. There's that herbaceousness as well, a little mintiness. The orchard fruit, I like the fact that Matt threw that out there, but I think this definitely noses older than a minimum of 2 years old. So
yeah, I agree. It really, the whole rye side of things really surprised me, actually. It wasn't a world that I was as familiar with as bourbon. It wasn't my go-to in the same way that bourbon has always been. But it's been a wonderful surprise. And I mean, I have friends who are very, very expert in this sort of thing, like yourselves, who love the bourbon, but some of them really, really go for the rye now. which is great. You know, I mean, it's great to have two things that people really enjoy. But the rye, when I first tried it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I wasn't expecting it at all.
Yeah, and this one comes in at 93 proof as well, so it is very approachable for someone that's just getting into rye. You know, we always talk about starting points for people that are experiencing or trying to get into a rye. You know, we have a lot of bourbon drinkers, and people obviously want to try to get into that rye category as well. Bourbons or ryes like this, these are great starting points, I think, for a lot of people to get to that point. So, Matt, what do you think?
I couldn't agree with you more, Mark.
Yeah. So, Graham, let's talk about you. I mean, people recognize your name, of course, but can you tell us about your background? You've obviously been involved in a lot of things, but if you can, you know, talk about your background and then talk about how you actually got into the whiskey industry as well.
Yeah. Well, background really, I sort of, well, they're linked in a way. They're linked by the fact that both my acting life and my getting into the manufacture of whiskey life really happened by accident. Like with a lot of things that have happened to me, to be honest. Writing, you know, I've written some books as well. That kind of happened accidentally. And when I say accidentally, it's not like, oh, I suddenly found myself writing a book, or, you know, I found myself on stage and I didn't know how I got there. It's just that not a lot of planning. And I sort of subscribe to the view that is actually quite a good way of getting into, especially anything that's creative. Because if you know too much about it, like, for instance, certainly I know most about the acting world. If I knew when I'd started what it was going to involve, I probably wouldn't have tried. I really, you know, because it's a tough life, lots of rejection. But when you don't have a knowledge of that, you have a sort of feeling of being bulletproof. You're just like, yeah, of course, I'm going to do that. And it was the same with the bourbon. When, you know, having had an interest in bourbon for, I guess, let me think, probably at least 20 years. Sort of a secret. It was a secret, really. I was a closet bourbon drinker. There's no question of it. I was introduced to it by an American friend of mine, another actor called Nolan North, who's a wonderful voice actor and TV actor as well. But we'd worked together and we got on really well. And I was around his house and we'd had dinner and he said, "Oh, do you want a bourbon?" And I said, "Sure." And I thought, you see, because coming from Scotland and the whole Scotch whiskey background, I, in my enormous ignorance, thought that bourbon was essentially just another Scotch, but they couldn't call it Scotch because it wasn't from Scotland. So I mean, this is how stupid I was. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay, fine. And he poured me this glass and I always forget what it was. Connor remembers, but he's not with us. But it was, anyway, delicious. It was just like, my God, it was like an epiphany. I was drinking this and I thought, why haven't I been drinking this before? And my enjoyment of Scotch didn't just go out the window. I didn't sort of go, well, that's the end of Scotch. I still enjoy Scotch, but this became a drink that I would go to whenever I wanted to, like, sit out on the deck, end of the day, that kind of thing. I'd have my Scotch at home and then there would be the bourbon, and it was always the bourbon. And it was almost unconscious. I wasn't aware until later that that's what I was doing. I was kind of ignoring the Scotch, almost cheating on the Scotch and going with the bourbon. And being Scottish and having that background, it is almost heresy to love bourbon like that. So I didn't talk about it. But then when I was given the opportunity to get into the world of bourbon myself, this sort of accidental path that has led to the Warchief and the Keeper, I was able to kind of come out as a bourbon lover. And now I just talk about it all the time. It's very liberating.
I mean,
but I felt
it's a
guilty.
great I get it.
I genuinely felt guilt
Well, I was going to ask because you are Scottish, so and I'm sure you get asked this question a lot by other people in the industry. But you think obviously you're from Scotland, so you drink Scotch, and then so how do your friends react to when you say, you know what, I really prefer bourbon, and now I'm going to start my own bourbon brand? Has anybody kicked you out of any clubs or anything because of that?
No, I mean, to be honest, I mean they are surprised. They are surprised, and I think as well, coming from that European background, Scottish background, here in New Zealand, when I talk about bourbon, they don't understand bourbon in the same way because Scotch is just a kind of thing that pervades, especially these sort of places like New Zealand and Australia and all the rest of it.
Yep.
But bourbon, they're a little ignorant of. Because they said, oh, so did you distill that in Scotland? And I went, no, I can't distill bourbon in Scotland. And I explained why, and then they become interested. And I've got the one bottle which you can see I've been drinking a little bit of. It's just difficult to get it into the country, to be really frank. But I've been sampling it with people that I'm working with, and it's always gone down well. And so I'm slowly, incrementally converting people to bourbon. And
well, that's great. I mean, as a native Kentuckian, I appreciate that. So thanks for sharing the love.
And the other thing about my bourbon journey is the things that I am always most enthusiastic about are things that I can link to my passion of history, I suppose, and the history of bourbon, how it came about, all the accidents, exactly the kind of accidents that the tax that was levied by Washington that then forced people from the East Coast to move inland because they didn't want to pay, and then they discovered that they could distill this liquor in a different way, and suddenly kind of bourbon was born. And I love that. I love that little sort of happenstance when it comes to things like this. And I think that enriches for me the experience of drinking bourbon, having that understanding and knowledge of background.
Well, maybe in the future there could be like the Elijah Craig story, written, directed, produced, starring Graham McTavish.
Sign me up. I'm just gonna move. I'm just moving. I'm not leaving.
Yeah,
I'm just moving because I need to plug myself in. I'm just
we don't want to.
You carry on.
We don't want to lose you.
I can.
We don't want to. Well, I was just going to say, because I know you're on a bit of a tight schedule this evening or this morning for you, and we're kind of at a point where it's probably a good point to take a break, just so we can keep everything on track. So you get plugged in, and we'll take a break. We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back in just a minute with more with Graham McTavish with McTavish Spirits in just a minute. James E. Pepper Barrel Proof Decanter Bourbon, distilled at the historic Pepper Distillery, DSP KY5 in Lexington, Kentucky. This new release, bottled in a striking recreated distillery decanter from the 1940s, has garnered high praise and accolades. Coming in at number 27 on Fred Minnick's Top 100 Whiskeys of 2023, it received a 94-point rating and was called absolutely delicious with notes of delicate hazelnut and toffee. Astor Wines, one of New York's most prestigious retailers, writes, "The whiskeys coming of age now are some of the finest from any American whiskey producer. This bourbon is arguably the most impressive you will find at this age. Available nationwide with a suggested retail price of $65. Learn more at jamesepepper.com.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the second round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how are you doing out there this evening?
I'm doing good, Mark. Good to be back in the studios, right? We had a week off.
Yeah, man. We had a week off. That's
vacation.
Right. Had a week off. Took a break. You got to go on vacation. I got to stay here and work. That's not fair. My daughter's been in Europe for 3 weeks. I don't know how that happens. She's gone to Europe twice this year, Matt. I've never been to Europe. Something is really wrong with that. But yeah, she was like in Budapest. She was in Monaco. She was in Florence. She was in Paris. So my daughter's living the great life. But anyway, we got more things to talk about than my jealousy of my 26-year-old daughter traveling the world. So we got a great show lined up, man. We're having a good time, having a really, really good time with our guests, a show I've wanted to do for quite some time. So I do have to say we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support, the support of all of our sponsors. Matt, with that said, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us this evening?
Absolutely. Back this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whenever it is you are getting your Bourbon Life podcast, is Graham McTavish, the president and founder of McTavish Spirits. Graham, welcome on back to the podcast.
My pleasure. It's good to be back. Yes.
Well, we appreciate you not leaving, and we appreciate that we didn't lose you there.
No. It's just my ability with computers is sketchy, to say the least, but so far so good.
Well, we're glad you got that resolved. So we're glad you're here with us. And Matt, I tell you what, we talked about the nose on this rye. So why don't we just jump in again? We'll talk about the palate and the finish, just to give everybody a reminder. We're drinking the McTavish Spirits rye. Bottles are beautiful. We'll talk about those here in just a little bit as well. Beautiful bottle, beautiful labeling. Everything's great on this. This is called the Keeper, aged a minimum of 2 years, 93 proof, 95.5 rye, Kentucky straight rye, distilled by Green River. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on this?
I really like that it has a lot of the playful young rye notes on the palate. Some of those like sort of grassy, herbal rye grain notes really come through to me. It's not overcrowded or overtaken by barrel influence. There's certainly a good amount of age that comes through on it as well. I get some floral notes too, kind of like some honeysuckle, a little bit of that like peach or herbal tea comes across on it as well. This is really good sipping rye right here. It's got a lot of flavor, a lot of really nice notes, really playful notes come along with it. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, Matt, and again, minimum of 2 years. I think a lot of people just see that or think of that and they think, oh, well, it can't be good. But I mean, it's rye whiskey, right? Rye whiskey matures in a different fashion than bourbon does. And when you put things together, you blend things together well, you can create a product that people are going to enjoy. And this is really enjoyable. It's an easy sipper, 93 proof. Matt, I agree. It's youthful, but again, it's not so grain forward that it's off-putting in any way. You get those rye notes, like you said, Matt, some grassiness. I get almost like a little hint of lemongrass on this, on the palate. But then I get a little spiciness too, almost like a peppery finish on it that continues for a while. So very, very nice on this one, Graham.
Great.
I like it.
Thank you.
I usually ask our guests, because I know you're drinking along with us, but is there anything in terms of your notes, your experience with the rye that you want to throw out or tasting or? Well,
I mean, I'm always in awe of when people describe the tasting notes of liquor. My vocabulary, I regard myself as somebody with a reasonably wide vocabulary, but I sort of just, when it comes to this sort of thing, I agree, if I can say so. I agree with how you've described it. I think it's very much the word that I've used before is surprising, and I think that's kind of encompassed to some degree by what you've described as you expect it to be a certain thing because of its age, and then it kind of confounds those expectations, and you go, "Oh yeah, okay. No, this isn't what I was expecting at all," and that's what I took mainly from it. And as I think I said earlier, my experience of rye whiskey is much more limited compared with my experience of bourbon. So, if I'm completely honest, I wasn't really looking forward so much to the rye. I was really passionate about the bourbon, and the rye was sort of like, oh no, okay, yeah, rye, yeah, let's try that. And actually, when it came to it, and I tasted it for the first time, I thought, wow, this is really something special for me, and the people I've given it to concur. And so, yeah, those kind of notes that you've described. I wish I had a bottle with me. I can't get it into New Zealand. No. I mean, the import taxes at the moment are so huge. Not just for liquor, but I have a friend I'm working with. He wants cigars, and getting a box of cigars sent here is just insane amounts of money. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's been tricky, but I concur with your description in every way, and I'm just glad that my caution when it came to producing a rye has been completely, put to one side, and I'm delighted with it. Absolutely delighted.
Well, Graham, you kind of alluded to this a few minutes ago, talking about your passion for the bourbon, as opposed to the rye. But let's talk about that in terms of people throw around the term celebrity brand. And sometimes that has a negative connotation to some people. And I think we do see that in the industry. We've seen some brands that just create a product and then a celebrity comes along and puts a name on it.
Yeah.
But what I've seen, because I've watched your brand from the beginning, I've seen what you've done. I've, watched the podcast and things that you've been involved with, talking to Connor as well, and understand, your level of involvement. But can you talk about that? The fact that the celebrity brand issue versus, where you are with this process and how you're involved with this?
Yeah. I mean, it makes me wince, to be honest with you, that term celebrity brand. I mean, the word celebrity itself is just something that I find deeply unsettling. In terms of the whiskey, I never wanted it to be seen that way. I really didn't. My involvement was right from the beginning, right at ground level, in the selection of the expressions that we've been doing, and it continues to be so, even when I'm away working. I wanted to be there, to actually physically be there. So that's why I've been over in the States last year, not so much this year so far because of work, but last year, going out, meeting people, going to stores, signing, going to whiskey events. I wanted to show that my interest in it came from a love of the product rather than a love of myself. So that's that in a nutshell. That's it. I think the mistake that a lot of celebrity brands make is that they just sort of stick a name, as you put it, stick it onto the label without any real connection with that person necessarily. But this is very much a personal passion of mine, and it means a great deal to me to be able to interact with the community, the bourbon community, which I have to say has been just wonderful. I've been so welcomed, and having, mainly experienced the world of Hollywood and the sort of film and television community, it's very different. It's very different. People want you to succeed in the bourbon community. They want your bourbon to be good. And if it is good, they will celebrate it. Even if they have their own brands, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're all about the bourbon itself. And that's been so refreshing, when I've been meeting people in this community, people championing the brand, trying to push it, helping us. It's been really gratifying and a great contrast, I have to say, to a lot of my previous experience in the acting world. So yeah, the celebrity thing. Yeah, if I want people to not really associate the bourbon with me at all, in a way.
Right.
I want them to associate the bourbon with what's in the bottle and the experience they have when they taste it, and that if by some chance they go, oh yeah, why is it called McTavish? Then fine, but that's not what I'm interested in. If I can help in any way in getting the product towards people, then yeah, I'm happy to do that. But I find the whole world of celebrity a little bit cringy, to be honest. I don't see myself at all like that. I think because my background was so heavily in theatre for so many years, where that really doesn't exist as a term, certainly not in my experience, that if I'm recognized from anything and people have enjoyed it, great. But I've never seen myself in that way at all. Never.
I think that's a great answer. Thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that. And speaking of the bourbon, Matt, let's jump over to the bourbon. We want to keep things on our schedule here, but this is the McTavish Bottled in Bond 7-year-old. So we jump up in age a little bit on this bourbon. This is bottled in Bond, so 100 proof. This one, I believe, was MGP. Distilled at MGP. And again, going back to the transparency, very respectful on that. Completely, transparent. Graham, can you? I was going to ask this question a little bit later, but can you talk about that? The importance of being transparent.
Yeah. Well, I think
everything.
I mean, to me, it wasn't even a question. Nor to Connor, that we were transparent. I think it was something that came very naturally to both of us, that we wanted people to know completely the process by which we got to this particular expression. And so I wasn't interested in concealing that in any way. It was transparency and honesty, I think, are things that distinguish to a great degree the bourbon community, going back to my earlier answer of being welcomed and being helped and being included and all of those sort of things, goes along in my mind with honesty and transparency and straight talking. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, that's okay. But we want people to know how we got to the point of being able to deliver the product that we have.
Yeah, great. And I should have mentioned as well, this is a 75-21-4 mash bill, so everybody out there knows that. So, and again, MGP product, which, you can't go wrong with MGP product. So, Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this one, man? You're working it pretty hard over there, Matt. I see you.
I'm trying to get my best out of it here. The nose on me, it noses like an older, dusty bourbon, in my opinion. There's like I get first off, like a really nice sweet corn note comes across, like corn pudding or like a cornbread, just really nice. Yeah. The sweetness comes through from the corn and that grain, like a little bit of grain from the corn as well, which I find to be a really nice, lovely aroma. Then there's like some taffy and caramel as well, but I'm getting like a lot of really nice oak notes, almost like a little bit of sandalwood as well, or like a wood pulp or wood shaving type notes. Just like really rounds out well the barrel influenced notes and plays with those sweet, lovely caramels and vanillas and the beautiful bourbon notes that we would expect, and that corn to sweeten it out. It really does nose kind of like an old, like 1950s style or older bourbon.
That's a great
I agree with that,
description.
Matt. Yeah, Matt's he's the ace in the hole here. Graham, you can see where his strong points are, man.
That's a great description. I love that. The 1950s. You sort of conjure up a whole picture of the visuals, the background. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, Matt, I get that the sweetness, like you talk about the sweet corn, the vanilla, comes through to me. That's my thing, vanilla, right? Vanilla and caramel, right? So definitely get that. It's kind of funny, Matt, because you talk about the oak, and it almost comes through to me like a toasted coconut aroma that I pick up on this for some reason. And it could just be my palate, because people obviously pick things up differently. But
sure.
You're talking about sandalwood or shavings. To me, it's almost like a toasted coconut, and I'm attributing that probably to the oak. But man, just really nice, Matt. Like you said, kind of a dusty. I get almost a hint of leather on this as well, as it's opened up a little bit. Just this nice little soft hint that comes through. But very, very nice on this one for sure. So, and again, the 7 years old. And Matt, we had this, if I remember correctly, at the Bourbon on the Banks, right? In October.
We did. Yep.
Last year, right? We got the sample.
Yeah, we had both of these products there.
That's right. We did both of them. And we both walked away, especially with the bourbon. I think we both walked away like, oh, wow, that was really, really good. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so happy to revisit this. Well, I know, Graham, you're on a little bit of a tight schedule here. So I think this might be a good place just to take a little break since we got through the nose on this bourbon, and then we can take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, come back and wrap everything up in the third round. So everybody just sit tight, hang out with us. We'll be back with more with Graham McTavish with McTavish Spirits in just a minute.
Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
Welcome to Old Dominick Distillery, a family-owned craft distillery nestled in the heart of downtown Memphis. Founded by descendants of Domenico Canali, a pioneering Sicilian immigrant who made Memphis his home in the late 1800s, Old Dominick is steeped in history and tradition. Old Dominick prides itself on offering a diverse selection of whiskeys to satisfy every taste. Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur or a curious newcomer, you'll find something to love, including an 85 proof Tennessee whiskey, bonded Tennessee whiskey, a single barrel Tennessee whiskey, a 90.1 proof bourbon, and coming this fall, a cask strength bourbon. Each bottle of Old Dominick whiskey is crafted with care, featuring unique mash bills that offer a variety of high and low proofs. This dedication to quality ensures there's a perfect pour for every whiskey enthusiast. Old Dominick whiskeys are proudly distributed in several states, including Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Georgia, Arkansas, Illinois, and Mississippi. Can't find us locally? No problem. You can conveniently purchase our products online and have them delivered straight to your doorstep. Ready to explore the world of Old Dominick? Visit our website at olddominick.com to learn more about our history, discover our products, and find a retailer near you.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here tonight, live in the Bourbon Life Studios, it is my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing for this third round, man?
I'm doing great, Mark. And yourself? You doing well?
Yeah, doing great. Drinking great whiskey, having a great conversation with a great guy, great guest. Something I've been looking forward to doing, having this show for quite some time. So just really happy to be doing this. Yeah, man, just a good night, Matt. So this is going to be hard to wrap this one up. I think we could probably continue talking for another 45 minutes, an hour, maybe even more. Who knows, right? So, but we'll do our best to wrap this one up as soon as we can. But we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support, everything they do for us. We could not do this show each week without them and our other sponsors. So thank you all for everything you do for us. So we really appreciate that. Matt, with that said, would you like to tell everybody who we have with us tonight, please?
Absolutely. Back for the final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast is Graham McTavish, the founder and president of McTavish Spirits. Graham, thanks for coming on back for the third round.
My pleasure, Matt. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Grant, we really appreciate it. Having a great time with, especially this bourbon, man. I'm just like, I can't wait to talk about the palate and the finish on this one.
Yeah.
7-year-old, bottled in bond. What was it? I'm just curious. Was there a particular reason why you guys decided to go with bottled in bond for this particular release?
I think I'm correct in saying that it's the first that a so-called, I hate the word, but celebrity brand had been associated with that. So there was that, but also the whole story of Bottled in Bond, the Bottled in Bond Act. It just really appealed to me from a historical point of view. I found it such a great story. So that was one of the reasons. But other than that, we just wanted to. We've discovered we sampled many expressions, and we came upon this one relatively early, and we just always kept circling back to it, and then eventually, after the extensive R&R that we did, which I found quite challenging, it always came back to this one, and this is the one we settled on. Very nice. A very excellent choice. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that, but but Matt and I definitely concur for sure. So let's talk about the bottles. I've kind of I've held them up and talked about it a little bit. Yeah. Man, these are gorgeous bottles. These, kind of like the BTAC, longer, elongated, skinny bottles. Yeah. Kind of like those wine bottle look, but the labeling is so detailed, so unique.
Can you talk about that, Graham? How you guys came up with this design and who actually designed that for you?
Yes. The label is thanks to my very good friend, Emma Quinn. She lives in Scotland. I have known her probably for over 30 years. We worked together in theatre in Scotland. She's a designer, graphic designer. And when we came to come up with the Warchief, I knew immediately I wanted to get Emma involved. Her own particular style, I just knew would work really well with what we wanted to convey. And she came back with a few designs, but this one jumped out immediately. And we wanted to combine the sort of graphic expression, the sort of the design with the words that I came up with on the back, and the idea of it being a Scotsman's dream of America was important to me, because I think a lot of people don't really understand why somebody who's necessarily Scottish would jump into the world of bourbon. But really, for me, it was about a parallel journey through my own career, my career that led me to America, that America gave me the opportunities that I've had as an actor after my life in theatre. And growing up in Scotland and in England, you dream of the world of America when you're interested in acting, and that dream took me to America, and so it seemed appropriate that when I came to describing a bourbon, which is the quintessential American spirit, that it was reflected in my dream of that country. Yeah.
Well, that's great, because I was going to ask you about the tagline. It's on both bottles, and it's on the back label, a Scotsman's dream of America. So obviously that explains that.
Yeah,
well,
yeah. No, I think when you grow up, certainly in the years that I grew up in the 60s and 70s in Britain, America was this sort of fabled place, this sort of far off land that you dreamt of and that you were familiar with through film and television. And then to go there and actually become a part of that world was a wonderful fulfillment of a dream. And I really wanted to put that into how I was describing the bourbon.
So another question I wanted to ask, Graham, in terms of your acting career in the whiskey industry, are there any similarities, anything from your acting career, anything that you had learned through your experiences that you were actually able to bring in and apply as well into the whiskey world? I mean, it's kind of a strange question, but
no.
I wondered if there was any.
Yeah, I think in many ways they are very, very different, very different. And, going back to one of my earlier answers of sort of falling into things by accident, I didn't fully appreciate what it would involve, the logistical side of it. I've learned to develop a huge appreciation of anybody who is involved in the creation of anything that is retailed in a country, whether it's coffee, milk, liquor, the supply chains, the purchase orders, all of these things that were completely alien to me. I had no idea about them. So that's been a huge education. Another contrast, which I think I alluded to earlier, is how truly welcoming the bourbon community has been. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that everybody in the film and television industry is out to stab you in the back. They're not, but it is different. It is different. There's a different feel to it. But the one thing that's helped me, I suppose, is when I'm meeting people, is that I have an experience of speaking in public and talking to people and being relaxed in that sort of a situation. So that's been helpful. But other than that, really, they are poles apart. In lots of ways, and that's a good thing. Really,
yeah, for sure. Matt, let's jump back over to the whiskey and let's talk about the palate and the finish on this McTavish Bottled in Bond Kentucky. Oh, I'm sorry, not Kentucky. It's bourbon whiskey. It's from MGP. This is the 75-21-4 mash bill, bottled in bond, 100 proof. This is 7 years old again. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on this?
It's funny. I've been told when I have too much bourbon that I actually get a little dramatic. So maybe for me, my acting and my bourbon careers run a little bit too parallel or perpendicular at times. But the palate on this is really, really lovely. Again, it's got a nice spicy note right up front that I would expect more from a rye whiskey, but the 21% rye really comes through with nice spicy pepper and really like wakes up the palate, wakes up the tongue, and gets you ready for the rest. There's that good sweet corn note. 75% corn coming through is really nice. I get sort of like a brittle, like a peanut or like almost like a toasted pine nut type brittle. It takes me back to the days of working in a restaurant and toasting pine nuts for a pesto. I remember that smell very well, but I kind of taste sort of that toasted pine nut note for me. Good and spicy again on the pepper, and then a little bit of like the cherry. I think the age, some of that time in the barrel is starting to come through with some of that cherry, a little bit of stone fruit on the finish as well to round it out. But just similar to the nose that we had where it kind of nose sort of like an older, dustier bourbon. I think a lot of the notes on this are kind of similar to that. To me, drink like a bourbon out of the 70s or 80s, one of the older ones that might be still sitting around in a liquor cabinet somewhere, but very lovely.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, Matt, I can't add a whole lot to that, except I get almost like a burnt sugar, like a brulee sugar on the palate as well. Kind of carries over into that finish. So that spiciness, like you said, 21% rye, it packs this nice spiciness, peppercorn, but then that sweetness, corn sweetness. But to me, it's almost like a burnt sugar type of sweetness as well. That combines with that, a little hint of cherry, almost like a dessert, like a creme brulee with a little cherry crumble on top.
Yeah, I've always found a lot of sort of Christmas memories when I drink that, and somebody actually very cleverly and eloquently described it as sort of Christmas in a glass. And that really hit a note for me that it brings back it slightly to Matt's point of the 70s and 80s, like a past, a remembrance of the past and happy memories of the past, I suppose. And Christmas, that's something with the spice that you have in it as well, and those the cherry and that kind of stuff, the kind of cakey, Christmassy element that I really, really like.
So, Graham, you live in the future, but you bring us whiskey from the past. How does this work?
It's amazing. What can I say? It's my secret.
Yeah.
The whiskey of the time traveler. Yeah.
There you go. That's right. That's exactly right. Got a DeLorean parked out back with the flux capacitor. You're ready to go. Right?
That's the way. That's it. That's it. I've got my DeLorean
Graham,
outside.
Yeah. Let's talk about the future of the brand. Let's talk about things going on. Is there anything else coming up? I know you said, you were here last year, and I remember because you were at the Bourbon and Beyond Festival. Yeah. I know you did some local television actually here in Lexington. You did several different appearances. I remember doing all that. This year, you mentioned earlier you've been more there working, but for the future, what's going on? Anything else coming up that you can talk about or share with us?
I'm going to be coming back to the States to talk more about the bourbon and the rye. We're going to be, in Texas, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and possibly Georgia. I'm going to be going around doing signings, and I'm also going to be going to the name of the event escapes me, the one in Houston, the big one in Houston, the whiskey.
Oh yeah. We had the guy from Matt, what's it called? We had him on the show. Damn, I can't remember his name now.
The name of it.
No,
I'm going to be there anyway. I'm going to be there, but it's also linked with helping to promote the next expression that we're going to be bringing out. Later this year, which I can't go into too much detail about, but it's coming. We're working on it. We're sampling stuff. We're very excited about it. So that'll be being brought to you in, I think, like the fourth quarter of this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
That
that's the plans. We are we're currently in retail in America, apart from the online presence, which is I think 40 odd states. We're retail in I'm going to get this right: Texas, Georgia, Kentucky, Nevada, Texas, Georgia, Wisconsin, and we're about to go into Alaska. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. Surprised me too. It wouldn't be the immediate. It was like, yeah, we have no offense to Alaska at all, but
Right.
we have to get bourbon into Alaska. But because I've always wanted to go to Alaska. Always wanted to go. It's one of the places in America that I've always wanted to visit. So I'm gonna engineer it so that I can be there to help promote.
Yeah, launch the market. Good for you.
Launch the market.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love doing that. I do because going back to what we were saying earlier about the whole association with it and all the rest of it. While I don't want it to be tied to my name, I'm proud to put myself out there as a name to help support it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. So much so that I had to pour myself another glass of the bourbon.
Good for you, Mark.
Just to make sure. So we're at the end of the episode here, and I hate that. Tack on. So before we get out of here, though, Graham, and you've kind of alluded to this, but I'm going to ask you. I always like to ask our guests, what's been your favorite part of this journey in terms of your whiskey journey so far? What's been your favorite part?
Oh, definitely the people. The people. Yeah. And I think, that's, it's not just confined to bourbon. One's life experience is built around the people one encounters. And my encounters in the world of bourbon have been universally great, actually. They really have. Surprising, great, warm, great characters. Some great characters in the bourbon community.
For sure.
You go, wow. And a bit like yourselves as well, that a lot of people in the bourbon community have these sort of parallel lives. They have their job, they have the things that they're professionally committed to, that they do very well and that they're very involved in. And then they have this passion, this, this thing that they have to be involved in and they have to talk about and they have to celebrate. And I've always loved that. I've always loved that about, anyone that has a passion, which means that they don't have to do it. They want to do it. And that's what I encounter all the time when I'm traveling around with bourbon and with the rye, is that the people want to be involved in the community and find good stuff. And so, that would be my answer, the people. For sure.
Great. Yeah, great answer. And I kind of guessed that based on what you're talking about earlier with your experience getting into the industry and the way people have welcomed you in, which is great. And that's great to hear. So, Matt, final thoughts though on this bourbon. What do you think, man?
Oh, absolutely delicious. I'm really appreciative of you taking the time to share it with us, Graham. This has been fun, and we really enjoyed it.
Pleasure. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and Graham, you talked about people can find you guys where you're available and stuff. I know you're here in Kentucky because I bought the bottle of rye here at Liquor Barn.
Yep.
Our sponsor, as a matter of fact, bought the bottle today. They had bourbon right beside it on the shelf, so that's a good thing.
Cool.
You guys, you're online as well, right? Got the website.
Yeah, McTavishSpirits.com. Yeah.
And I know you're on Instagram as well.
Indeed.
Follow you guys and tag you. So
Indeed.
Awesome. So people can find more information there, obviously.
Absolutely.
So, Graham, any final thoughts before we wrap it up? This morning.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really, I not only like talking about this sort of stuff, but I'm always learning things when I have these conversations. So every time I speak to people like yourselves, it adds a little bit more to my knowledge and understanding and appreciation of the world that I find myself in now. So really, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you very much. Matt, anything final thoughts you want to add before we get out of here?
Graham, seeing great people like you behind brands that want to bring great product to us really deepens our appreciation for the bourbon industry and all the people in it. Like you say so much that you really love about everything. And it really is people like you that make it what we've come to appreciate more than anything else. So thank you. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with us, our listeners, and we wish you the best in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll echo that too, Matt. You know, one thing, the transparency, I appreciate that. I think a lot of bourbon drinkers out there will definitely appreciate that as well, Graham. The fact you guys are very transparent, but also the fact that, and we talked about this earlier, I mean, it's not just a person sticking a name on a bottle. I mean, you're involved with this process.
Yeah.
You can tell you're passionate about, like you just talked about, you know, you have parallel lives. You have these things you're involved with, your work, but then you have these other things that you choose to do, and you've chosen to do this, and you've chosen to be involved. So I have a lot of respect for you for doing that, because there's a lot of people that don't pursue it that way. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
With that said, I'm going to wrap us up here. Of course, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support, the support of all of our sponsors. We couldn't do the show without all of them. We appreciate you, our listeners, like Matt always says, whatever time of day it is, morning, noon, or night, whenever it is you get your Bourbon Life fix. We appreciate you taking the time to sit in and listen with us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Bourbon Life. We have the private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We have some fun conversations in there. We'd love for you guys to join us in there. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. We'd appreciate that. And don't forget to check out the Whiskey Trip. Our buddy Mike, Big Chief, is doing that show under our umbrella. The Whiskey Trip every Tuesday comes out. He's doing some great shows. So be sure to give him a listen and a follow as well. With that said, I'm going to wrap it up, send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Welcome to the kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company, where every visit is a celebration of tradition and flavor. Did you know that the kitchen table is nestled right within the heart of the distillery? That's right. You can experience the essence of James B. Beam's legacy while savoring their delectable dishes. Join them every Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a culinary journey like no other. Planning a special event? Let the kitchen table be your host, creating unforgettable memories for you and your guests. And don't miss their exclusive Behind the Beam Tour and monthly Claremont Supper Club events, which will feature Baker's 13 at the August 15th event. For more information and reservations, visit beamdistilling.com. The kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company. Come as a friend, leave as family.